The man had everything people dream about. Tall glass buildings carried his name. Newspapers talked about his deals and victories. His face appeared on magazine covers, always serious, always distant. People said he was lucky. People said he had won at life. But none of them saw what happened after the lights went off and the doors of his mansion closed. He lived alone in a house that was too big and too quiet. Every room looked perfect, yet nothing felt warm. Expensive furniture sat untouched. Paintings hung on the walls, chosen by experts, but he rarely looked at them. The silence followed him everywhere, like a shadow that never left. At night, when the city slept, he often sat near a large window, staring outside. The view showed bright streets and moving cars. But inside him, everything felt still. His phone stayed quiet. No calls. No messages that mattered. People wanted his money, his power, his attention. Very few cared about the man behind it all. He was known as a hard businessman, cold, sharp, unforgiving. Employees feared disappointing him. Partners respected him but kept their distance. He trusted numbers more than people, because numbers never lied or walked away years ago. He was different. Back then, music filled his life. A piano once stood at the center of his world, not as decoration, but as something alive. He used to play late into the night, letting his feelings flow through his fingers. The piano understood him, when people didn't. It was the only place where he felt honest and free. Then everything changed. A single painful event shattered that part of him. The memory still burned inside his chest, sharp and heavy. It involved love, trust, and a promise that was broken. Music, which once healed him, became a reminder of loss. The piano turned from comfort into pain. After that day, he stopped playing. The piano was moved to a far room in the mansion, covered, forgotten. No one was allowed to touch it. Even staff were warned to stay away. If someone mentioned music, his face changed instantly. His jaw tightened. His eyes went cold. People learned quickly. Some things were never to be spoken. Work became his escape. He filled every hour with meetings, travel, and deals. He built walls around himself, strong and high. Success grew, but happiness didn't follow. Applause from the world felt empty when he returned home alone. Sometimes late at night, he heard the piano in his mind. Not real sound, just memory. A soft melody from a past life. When that happened, he poured himself another drink and pushed the feeling away. He told himself emotions were weaknesses. Love was a distraction. Music was a lie, yet deep down the wound never healed. One evening, after another long day, he came home earlier than usual. The house greeted him with its usual silence. As he walked through the hallway, his steps slowed near the closed door of the unused room. He stopped. He didn't know why. His hand lifted almost on its own, but he pulled it back. His chest felt tight. Anger mixed with sadness. He turned away and continued walking, pretending nothing had happened. The next morning, he attended a small charity event, something his advisors insisted on. He didn't care much for it, but appearances mattered. The event was simple. No loud speeches, no flashing cameras. Just a gathering meant to support young talent and education. He planned to stay for 10 minutes. That was when he noticed her. She wasn't standing at the front. She wasn't dressed to impress. She sat quietly near the back, listening, observing, smiling softly at people around her. There was nothing loud about her presence, yet something about her felt calm and steady. She looked ordinary, and that was what made her different. When someone spoke to her, she listened fully. When she laughed, it was natural, not forced. She didn't seem interested in who was rich or important. She was just there, being herself. Their eyes met briefly. He looked away first. For reasons he couldn't explain, that moment stayed with him. During conversations with donors and organizers, his mind drifted back to her calm expression. There was no hunger in her eyes, no expectation. Later, as the event ended, he overheard someone mention that she helped teach music to children who couldn't afford lessons. The word music made his shoulders tense. He almost left immediately. but something held him back. He watched as she spoke with a child, showing patience and kindness. The child laughed, clearly comfortable around her. That sight stirred something deep inside him, something he thought was long gone. Against his own nature, he approached. Their conversation was simple. No talk of business. No talk of wealth. She didn't ask him who he was or what he owned. She spoke about small things, about teaching, about how music helped children express feelings they couldn't put into words. He felt uncomfortable. Not because she was rude, but because she was honest. When she mentioned the piano, he stiffened. She noticed, but didn't push. Instead, she smiled gently, as if she understood silence better than words. Before leaving, he said something unexpected, even to himself. Half serious, half careless. "Play this piano and win my heart." The words escaped his mouth like a challenge and a shield. At the same time, she didn't laugh. She didn't look shocked. Either, she simply smiled. That smile stayed with him long after the night ended. As he returned home, the mansion felt different. Still quiet, but heavier somehow. The covered piano waited in its dark room, untouched, holding years of unspoken pain. For the first time in a long while, he wondered if locking that door had also locked his heart. He didn't know it yet, but something had already begun to change. The next morning, she woke up with the usual sunlight spilling into her small apartment. Her room was modest, with a simple desk, a few books, and a corner where a small keyboard rested. She loved music, not for fame or praise, but for the quiet way it connected hearts. She played whenever she could, teaching children after school, and sometimes playing just for herself. That day, the words from the Billionaire lingered in her mind. "Play this piano and win my heart." She couldn't quite tell if he was serious. It didn't matter. The idea stayed with her because of something beyond the words, a feeling that went deeper than any challenge she had ever faced. Meanwhile, he returned to his mansion. The house felt unusually silent, almost as if it was waiting. He walked past the covered piano, feeling the weight of years pressing down on him. The words he had spoken to her sounded strange in his own ears. He didn't usually make such impulsive remarks. He didn't usually care if someone could meet a challenge he set. And yet something about her smile haunted him. Over the next few days, he tried to ignore it. Business meetings, phone calls, flights, he threw himself into them, hoping to forget. But each time he returned home, the silence of the mansion seemed louder, sharper. He caught himself thinking about her. Her calm presence, the way she listened without judging. He wondered if she even remembered him at all. For her part, she tried to continue her routine, teaching children, playing music, living her simple life, but her thoughts kept drifting back to him. Not because of his wealth or power, but because of the vulnerability she had seen in his eyes. She realized that behind the cold exterior, there was pain that few could understand. And she wanted to help, not because she had to, but because something inside her told her she could. A few days later, by coincidence or fate, they met again at a charity meeting focused on arts and music. This time she came with her keyboard, intending to play for the children. He was there to oversee the event, though reluctantly. When he saw her, she was surrounded by children, her laughter filling the room, the notes of her music weaving through the air. He felt a pull he had not felt in years. He stayed at the back, observing quietly. She didn't notice him at first, fully absorbed in guiding the children. Yet as soon as their eyes met, there was a recognition. She smiled softly at him, a gentle acknowledgement without words. And for the first time, he realized he didn't want to look away. After the event, he approached her. "You have a gift," he said. It was not a compliment meant to flatter. It was a statement, simple and honest. "The children are lucky to have you." She nodded, smiling. "They teach me as much as I teach them. Music gives them a voice." Paused, unsure of how to respond. It had been years since anyone had spoken to him without expectation. No flattery, no ambition, no hidden agendas. Just honesty. It was both comforting and unsettling. "Play often?" he asked, almost hesitantly. "Whenever I can," she replied. "Music helps me understand life, even when it's hard. It's healing." Something in her words struck a chord within him. He remembered his own past, the piano that had once been the center of his world, the pain that had pushed it away. A strange thought occurred: could music still heal him if he let it? He decided, almost on impulse, to invite her to his mansion. Not for a social visit, not for a grand gesture, just to see her play the piano he had locked away for years. His advisors were shocked when he made the decision, but he didn't care. For the first time in a long time, he followed an instinct rather than a strategy. When she arrived, she noticed immediately how different the house felt from his public persona. It was silent, vast, and intimidating, yet not oppressive. There were signs of life here and there. A book left open, a coat draped over a chair, but mostly it was empty. And there in the center of the room stood the piano, covered, silent, waiting. He watched her closely as she approached. There was a hesitation. In her steps, a respect for the instrument. She had no idea what had happened in this room, what history it held, but she sensed the weight. She touched the cover gently, lifting it as if unveiling something sacred. The keys gleamed, untouched by human hands for years. He said nothing, just observed, feeling a mixture of fear and anticipation. Could she understand the pain this piano held? Could she reach the part of him that no one else could? She sat down and began to play. At first, softly, almost cautiously. Then, as she felt the space around her, the music became fluid, expressive, alive. She didn't play to impress him. She played to express herself, to tell a story through sound. And slowly, carefully, he felt the old wound inside him begin to stir. Not with pain this time, but with a strange sense of recognition. The music was familiar. It reminded him of who he had been, of feelings he had locked away. He noticed small details: the way her fingers danced over the keys, the way her body swayed slightly with the rhythm. There was honesty in her music, a connection to life that he had almost forgotten. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of something he could not name, something beyond control, beyond calculation. It was hope. When the piece ended, she looked up at him. He remained silent, unsure what to say. Words felt inadequate. Yet in the quiet, a bond began to form. Delicate and fragile, but real. She had not tried to reach him. She had simply played. And in doing so, she had touched something within him that no money, power, or achievement ever could. Over the following days, she visited often. Each time she brought music, patience, and a quiet presence that filled the empty spaces of his mansion. He found himself waiting for her visits, something he had never expected. He listened more, spoke less, discovered the strange comfort of simply being with someone who saw him without judgment. Their relationship grew slowly, not in grand gestures or dramatic confessions, but in small moments: a smile across the room, a shared laugh, a piece of music played just for the other. And with each visit, the walls he had built began to crack. The silence of his life softened, and the old pain began to lose its sharpness. He realized that he had never experienced this kind of attention before. Not because she was impressed by his wealth, but because she cared for the essence of him, the hidden man beneath the suits and the headlines. And in that realization, he began to understand what he had been missing all these years: connection, honesty, and trust. She too learned from him. She saw the loneliness behind the success, the weight of a life spent chasing expectations. She recognized his fear of opening up, his struggle to trust, and she met it with patience, not pressure. And slowly, he began to allow himself to be vulnerable, sharing memories, fears, and fragments of the past he had tried to forget. Music became the language they shared. Words were often unnecessary. A melody expressed what could not be spoken. And through the piano, a subtle understanding blossomed: a promise of healing, a chance to rebuild trust, and perhaps to find joy again in a life that had long felt empty. One evening, after a particularly moving piece, he finally spoke. His voice was quiet, almost hesitant. "I forgot what this felt like, to feel alive again." She smiled gently, her hands still resting on the keys. Music has a way of reminding us of ourselves, of what we need. He looked at her. Really looked for the first time, without the shield of wealth or fear. He saw sincerity, warmth, and a quiet strength that neither power nor money could buy. And in that moment, he realized that the challenge he had issued half joke, half invitation was no longer important. It didn't matter if she won his heart or not. What mattered was that she had reached it anyway, with nothing but honesty and music. The mansion no longer felt empty. The piano no longer felt cursed. And the billionaire, who had once believed himself untouchable, began to understand that healing was possible not through control, not through wealth, but through connection, empathy, and the simple, profound act of playing a melody that spoke to the heart. Weeks passed, and each visit became a small ritual. She arrived at the mansion in the late afternoons, carrying nothing but a small bag with her sheet music and a quiet smile. The billionaire found himself anticipating these moments. He did not know why he felt this way. He had never allowed anticipation to touch his life before. Each time the door opened, a quiet energy entered, different from the sterile calm he had lived with for years. At first, the piano remained a guarded space. He watched her approach it almost anxiously, remembering every key, every note, every memory tied to it. But she played with gentle certainty. The melodies she created were soft at times, powerful at others, always honest. She did not perform. She conversed with the instrument, telling stories with each note. And he listened, often in silence, letting the sound reach parts of him that had been locked for years. One day, while she played a particularly moving piece, something unexpected happened. He felt a wave of old memories rushing back, not the warm ones, but the painful ones. The loss that had made him bury the piano, the betrayal that had taught him to trust no one. He clenched his fists, his breath uneven, and for the first time, the silence of his mansion felt oppressive again. The music did not comfort immediately. It stirred the wound he had tried to forget. She noticed the change in him. Without looking up, she adjusted her playing, softening the notes, adding pauses, letting the melody breathe. She did not ask what was wrong. She did not rush him. She simply let the music flow, carrying him along with it. Slowly, the tension in his shoulders eased. The storm inside him began to calm. This was new. He had never let anyone see him like this. Never allowed anyone to witness the fragility beneath his carefully constructed exterior. And yet, he found himself wanting more. He wanted to feel everything again, even if it hurt. He realized that shielding himself from pain had also shielded him from joy, from beauty, from connection. Over the next few sessions, he began speaking in small fragments. He would mention a memory, a regret, a fleeting thought. She listened, always with patience, never pressing. Sometimes she would nod. Sometimes she would hum a soft harmony under her breath, letting the music speak where words could not. And with every note, every pause, he felt lighter. His walls, brick by brick, began to crumble. One rainy afternoon, he shared something he had never told anyone. He spoke of a past love, someone he had trusted completely, only to be left shattered. He spoke of how music had been their world, how they had shared melodies that now haunted him. Her eyes softened as she listened. She did not judge. She did not offer advice. She simply let him speak, and when he fell silent, she played again, filling the emptiness with something healing, something alive. The mansion itself seemed to change. The rooms that had felt cold and empty now carried echoes of laughter, of conversation, of music. The piano no longer felt like a reminder of loss, but a bridge between the past and the present. She had unlocked a door he had long kept closed, and though the memories were painful, they were now accompanied by hope. He began to notice small things in her presence. The way she listened intently to a child's mistake, the way her hands moved unconsciously when she spoke about music, the way she smiled softly at moments others might overlook. These details, simple and unassuming, began to teach him how to notice life again, how to appreciate moments without calculation, without expectation. Their connection deepened slowly. He would sometimes share a fragment of music from his past, a melody he had composed but never played publicly. She would respond, not with words, but with her own interpretation, weaving her notes around his, creating a dialogue that transcended language. Through these musical conversations, trust grew. With trust came healing. One evening, she played a piece that was different from anything she had performed before. It was complex, emotional, almost raw in its honesty. As he listened, he felt tears welling in his eyes, a mixture of sorrow and relief. The pain that had been buried for so long began to surface, but instead of fear, he felt release. For the first time in years, he cried openly in front of someone, and she did not flinch. She continued playing, letting the music carry the emotion, letting him heal in the safety of sound. He realized then that she had not come to challenge him, nor to win anything from him. She had come simply to share, to be present, to offer the gift of music as a way to mend the invisible wounds he carried. Her smile, quiet and genuine, had begun to seep into the cracks of his heart, filling spaces he thought would remain empty forever as the weeks turned into months. He found himself opening in ways he had never imagined. He laughed more, spoke more, and allowed himself to feel the simple pleasures of life, the warmth of the sun on his face, the taste of a meal shared, the joy of a melody that made him remember who he once was. And through it all, she remained steady, a quiet presence that never demanded, never judged, only gave. Music became more than a ritual. It became a lifeline. The mansion, once a symbol of isolation, transformed into a sanctuary. The piano, once a relic of pain, became a source of connection. And he, the man who had built walls around his heart, began to understand that true strength was not in hiding from pain, but in facing it with honesty, with trust, and with someone who cared. Their bond was unspoken, yet undeniable. Words were often unnecessary. A single note, a subtle harmony, a shared silence could convey more than any conversation. And in those moments, he felt alive in a way he had forgotten. He felt seen. He felt understood. He felt slowly but surely whole again. One quiet evening, after a long session of playing, he spoke softly. "I never thought I could feel this again. I forgot what it meant to trust, to let someone in." She looked at him, her eyes calm, her hands resting on the keys. "Music has a way of reminding us of what we've lost and what we can still find," she said. He nodded, realizing the truth in her words. He had lost much, but with her, he was finding pieces of himself he thought were gone forever. And in that discovery, there was hope, there was healing. There was the beginning of something neither of them could have anticipated, a connection deeper than any deal, any wealth, any power could ever offer. And so, in the quiet mansion filled with melodies and memories, the billionaire began to feel a stir of life he had thought impossible. Music had become a bridge, a guide, and a gentle reminder that healing could start even in the most unexpected ways, with the simplest of notes, played by hands that offered nothing but truth and heart. As the days continued, the mansion began to feel less like a place of loneliness and more like a home. The billionaire found himself anticipating her visits, though he tried not to admit it. Each time she arrived, the atmosphere shifted. There was a lightness, a warmth that had not existed before. The piano room, once a place of fear and old pain, now hummed with life and possibility. Music had begun to bridge the gap between the past he feared and the present he longed for. She never pressured him, never demanded anything. She simply played, spoke, and listened. Her presence was calm, steady, and patient. Even the most difficult moments, when memories rose to the surface and tears threatened to fall, were met with quiet support. She would sit beside him in silence, sometimes holding a hand near his, sometimes simply letting him be. And in those moments, he felt something he had not felt in years. Trust was fragile at first. Every word, every glance, every note of music had to be earned. He had been hurt too deeply before, and opening up again felt impossible. Yet, her sincerity, her gentle patience, created a space where fear could begin to fade. Slowly, he allowed himself to share fragments of his past stories of disappointment. Moments of regret, and memories that had haunted him for years. She listened, never interrupting, never judging. Allowing him to speak in his own time, through music, she communicated what words could not. A soft melody would follow a story of pain, offering comfort without comment. A gentle harmony would fill the air when silence was too heavy. He realized that her music was not just performance, it was an expression of empathy, a language that healed as much as it communicated. And through that language, he learned to open up in ways he had thought impossible. There were moments of vulnerability he had never allowed himself to experience with anyone. One afternoon, after a particularly emotional piece, he sat back, his hands trembling slightly. "I forgot what it feels like to be truly seen," he said quietly. She simply nodded, her fingers resting lightly on the piano. "Music reminds us of ourselves," she replied. "It reminds us that we are alive, even when we have been hurt." He began to see small changes in himself. He laughed more easily, smiled without caution, and allowed himself to feel the simple joys of life, the warmth of sunlight streaming through the windows, the taste of a shared meal, the satisfaction of a melody perfectly played. The mansion, which had once felt cold and empty, now echoed with laughter, conversation, and music. Each note, each smile, each shared silence became a building block in the bridge toward healing. One evening, after a long session, she played a song that seemed to speak directly to his heart. The melody carried a mixture of sorrow and hope, of past regrets and future possibilities. He closed his eyes, letting the music wash over him. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel fully, without restraint, without fear. Tears streamed down his face, not from weakness, but from release. The pain that had burdened him for so long began to lighten, replaced by a fragile but growing sense of peace. In the days that followed, their bond deepened further. He began to share small pieces of his daily life, things he had previously considered unimportant or trivial. She listened with attention, responding not with judgment or advice, but with empathy and understanding. He found himself seeking her opinion, valuing her perspective, and realizing that he had missed this kind of human connection for far too long. Her influence extended beyond music. She encouraged him to take small risks, to step outside the rigid routines he had created for himself. He started to take walks in the garden, feeling the grass under his feet and the breeze on his face. He noticed the changing seasons, the birds in the trees, the sunlight glinting on the fountain. Simple things which he had ignored for years began to bring him joy again. And through it all, she remained a gentle guide, never pushing, only encouraging him to notice the beauty around him. One rainy afternoon, as they sat by the window listening to the sound of raindrops on the roof, he spoke quietly about his past failures. "I thought I could control everything. I thought if I had enough wealth and power, I could protect myself from pain. But I was wrong. I built walls around myself, and they only trapped me inside." She reached out, placing a hand near his. "Walls can protect us." "Yes," she said softly, "but they also keep out the things that make life worth living. Trust, connection, love. You are learning that now." He nodded, realizing the truth in her words. The process was slow, deliberate, and sometimes painful. Trust could not be forced. It had to be earned. And yet, with her presence, with her music, and with her gentle patience, he felt himself becoming capable of opening again. Music continued to be their shared language. They played together, sometimes improvising, sometimes following written pieces. Each session was a conversation, a negotiation of emotion, a delicate dance of trust. He learned to express his feelings through sound, finding release and understanding in ways he had never known. She learned to listen not just with her ears, but with her heart, interpreting the subtle nuances of his playing, guiding him gently toward healing. Slowly, the mansion transformed. Rooms that had been silent now held echoes of laughter and melody. The air itself seemed lighter, filled with warmth and possibility. He began to care for the spaces around him, noticing the small details he had ignored for so long. A vase of flowers, a freshly cleaned window, newly polished floor, they all became part of the process of reclaiming life, of opening to joy once more. Even his staff noticed the change. He smiled more often, spoke with patience, and showed a level of kindness he had not exhibited in years. He began to interact with them as people rather than as tools. Realizing that the connection he was rebuilding with her could extend to others as well, the influence of her presence was quiet but profound, altering not just him but the environment he had once dominated with cold efficiency. One evening, as they finished a long session of playing, he turned to her, his expression softer than she had ever seen. "I never thought I could feel this way again," he admitted. "I thought the past would define me forever." She smiled, placing her hands lightly on the keys. "The past is part of us," she said, "but it does not have to control us. Healing is possible even when it feels impossible. You are proving that." In that moment, he realized the depth of her impact on his life. She had not forced him to change, nor had she demanded anything in return. She had simply offered her presence, her music, and her understanding. And through that, he had found a path back to himself, to trust, to hope. The bond they shared became unspoken, yet profound. Words were often unnecessary. A look, a shared silence, a single note played in harmony conveyed more than any conversation could. Through music, patience, and quiet empathy, he learned to heal. And in her, he found not just a companion, but a guide, a mirror, and a source of quiet strength. As the nights grew longer and the mansion filled with music and warmth, he began to understand the true meaning of connection. It was not about wealth, status, or power. It was about presence, honesty, and empathy. It was about allowing oneself to be vulnerable and trusting that someone would meet that vulnerability with care. Through her guidance, through her music, and through her patience, the billionaire discovered a new way to live. One where joy and sorrow could coexist, where past pain could be acknowledged without being allowed to dominate the present, and where trust could be rebuilt, slowly but surely. The piano, once a symbol of loss, had become a vessel for healing, and through it, he had begun to reclaim the life he had long abandoned. As the months passed, the connection between them deepened into something neither of them had expected. The billionaire, who had once believed he was untouchable, began to understand the quiet power of presence, patience, and sincerity. He had learned to let down his walls, to face the pain of the past, and to embrace the healing that music and trust could bring. She had shown him that life could be gentle, that joy could be found in small moments, and that love did not require perfection, only honesty. One evening, the mansion was quiet except for the soft hum of the rain outside. The piano room was filled with the gentle glow of the lamp. She played a melody that was both tender and hopeful, notes flowing like a river of emotion. He sat nearby, listening, feeling every chord resonate with memories. With lessons learned, with the growing warmth in his heart. When the piece ended, he didn't speak immediately. He simply watched her, realizing how much she had changed his life without even trying. Her music had reached the deepest parts of him, parts he had hidden from the world and even from himself. She had not demanded love or recognition. She had offered only her honesty, her patience, and her gift, and that was enough. Finally he spoke, his voice soft and unsteady. "I thought I could never feel this way again. I thought my heart was closed forever, but you've changed that." She smiled, her eyes warm. "You didn't need me to fix anything. You needed to remember how to feel, to trust, and to open up again. Music just helped guide you there." He looked down, taking a deep breath. "I don't know how to say this properly, but I think you've won my heart. Not because I said it could be one, but because it already was. You didn't need to try. It happened naturally." Her smile widened, and she reached out, lightly placing her hand on his. "I never needed to win it. I only wanted to share what I love and be present. If your heart feels full now, that's all that matters."
Oh.
The silence that followed was not empty. It was filled with unspoken understanding, with respect, and with the quiet joy of two people who had found each other in unexpected ways. For him, it was a revelation. For her, it was a fulfillment of the simple, honest work she had always believed in. And in that moment, they both realized that connection, trust, and sincerity were far more powerful than wealth, status, or control. Life in the mansion began to change even more. The air was lighter, the rooms warmer, and the piano room became a sanctuary. They spent hours there together, sometimes playing music, sometimes simply sitting in silence, letting the presence of the other speak volumes. He found that he could laugh freely, that he could share memories without fear, and that he could allow himself to feel joy and sorrow alike. The billionaire started noticing details he had long ignored: the way sunlight painted patterns on the floor, the small birds that visited the garden, the scent of flowers that had bloomed without his attention. Each observation brought a quiet happiness, a gentle reminder that life was not meant to be lived behind walls of fear and isolation. And she was there, observing alongside him, sharing in these small wonders with a quiet, steady heart. Their bond extended beyond the music. They began to explore the world together, slowly, cautiously, savoring simple moments. Walks through the city, visits to parks, small meals shared without pretense, all became acts of connection. He discovered the joy of companionship, the importance of being seen, and the freedom that came with trust. She learned more about him with each passing day: the man behind the wealth and reputation, the man capable of deep emotion, empathy, and love. One afternoon, as the sun set, casting a warm glow across the mansion's piano room, he played a melody of his own creation for her. The notes were hesitant at first, unsure, but as he continued, they grew bolder, richer, filled with emotion. She listened, letting each chord wash over her, understanding that this music carried his heart in its rhythm. It was not just sound. It was an offering, a confession, and a gift. When he finished, he looked at her with vulnerability. "I've never played like that for anyone," he admitted. "I've never shared this part of myself, but with you, I could." She reached out, touching his hand gently. "I hear you," she said simply, "and I feel every word." The trust they had built allowed them to share feelings without fear. He could be vulnerable, and she could respond with empathy. He could laugh freely, and she could join him without judgment. Their lives intertwined in quiet, profound ways that transcended words and gestures. Music had opened the door, but what followed was the true connection of hearts. As time went on, he found that he no longer feared the past. The pain that had once seemed unending was now a memory, softened by trust, understanding, and the gentle power of human connection. The mansion, once a place of solitude and sorrow, had become a home filled with life, music, and warmth. And through it all, she remained a steady presence, offering guidance, patience, and the quiet assurance that he was not alone. One night, as they sat together after playing, he spoke softly, almost to himself. "I thought I had lost the ability to feel. I thought my heart would always be closed. But now I understand. I can trust again. I can love again, and it is because of you." She smiled, her hand resting lightly on the piano. "It was always inside you," she said. "I only helped you remember." In that simple statement, he realized the depth of her impact. She had not imposed change upon him, nor had she sought to control his feelings. She had offered what she could: her music, her patience, her honesty in doing so. She had healed the wounds he had carried for so long. He understood now that love did not have to be earned through grand gestures or challenges. It was often found in quiet, consistent presence and sincere connection. The piano became their shared sanctuary, a place where they could communicate without words, express emotions without fear, and build a life together through trust and understanding. Each session, each note, each shared silence deepened their bond, reinforcing the lessons they had learned: that vulnerability could be met with care, that pain could be transformed into beauty, and that hearts could heal when met with empathy and honesty. As the story of their connection unfolded, he realized that she had already won his heart long before he could articulate it. It had not been a challenge, a game, or a test. It had been a quiet, steady influence, a presence that had reminded him how to live, how to feel, and how to trust again. And in this realization, there was profound gratitude, relief, and love. The mansion, The piano and their shared moments became symbols of transformation. He had moved from isolation and pain to openness and joy. She had remained true to herself, offering her gifts without expectation, and in doing so, had guided him toward healing. Together, they had created a space where life could be experienced fully, honestly, and deeply, in the final moments of this chapter of their lives. They sat together at the piano, hands occasionally brushing, eyes meeting with quiet understanding. The music played on, a testament to what had been lost, what had been regained, and what could continue to grow. And in the simplicity of the moment, with nothing but notes, silence, and shared presence, they understood that true connection, trust, and love were not won through power or wealth, but through authenticity, patience, and the willingness to open one's heart. And so, the billionaire, once closed off and distant, found himself fully alive, fully open, and fully capable of love. The woman who had entered his life so unassumingly had not only won his heart, but had helped him reclaim it, showing him that the most powerful melodies are those played not for an audience, but for the soul. Through her music, her presence, and her unwavering honesty, they discovered that healing, trust, and love could flourish even in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the simplest actions, playing a piano, offering a smile, being present, can change a life forever. Life continued to blossom in ways neither of them had imagined. The billionaire, once trapped in silence and solitude, now experienced days filled with laughter, conversation, and the soft, constant presence of music. The mansion, once a monument to loneliness and control, had transformed into a home alive with warmth and possibility. Every corner carried a memory. Every melody played on the piano was a reminder of trust rebuilt and hearts healed. She continued her visits, each one a gentle infusion of light into his world. They explored not only the piano, but the house and the city, discovering small joys they had both overlooked. He had learned to notice life again, the pattern of rain on the window, the smell of fresh coffee in the morning, the way a bird might pause on a branch just to watch them pass by. These small observations, once meaningless, now became sources of quiet happiness. She had taught him, without words, to live in the present, to appreciate what was real, and to let go of what could not be changed, the piano. Their constant companion had become more than an instrument. It was a bridge between their worlds, a place where feelings could be shared without fear or explanation. They often played together, improvising melodies that spoke of sorrow, joy, hope, and trust. He had never realized music could be so personal, so intimate. Every note resonated with their shared experiences. Every harmony carried their emotions. It was a language that transcended words and reminded them both of the beauty and vulnerability. Over time, the billionaire noticed that the emotional walls he had built around himself were not only crumbling, but being replaced with something stronger: openness, empathy, and the courage to feel. He began to understand that his life, once defined by control and isolation, could now be shaped by connection, honesty, and shared joy. And she had shown him that transformation need not be loud or dramatic. It could be quiet, consistent, and sincere. One afternoon, as they played a duet, he paused mid-melody and looked at her. "I never thought I would feel at peace again,"